The convergence of our voices is the song of our beauty. Many voices will speak here, the song woven through diverse notes. Hello, everybody, and a big welcome to Heather Roan Robbins, who is an astrologer and a palmist and all kinds of interesting things, author. But I will ask you, Heather, to describe yourself in your own words.
It's always such an interesting question. I'd say I'm a counselor and with the well-stocked toolbox. I'm an interfaith minister, and that's a story. Um, and I've been studying palmistry and astrology since my teens, and I turned 70 this fall, so it's been a long time. It's been my full-time occupation for 30 some years. And I write a regular weekly article for the newspaper in New Mexico on astrology, on the astrological weather of the moment, for Wee Moon Calendar, and for various other websites. You can Google star codes and you will find it. I've produced my Astro Oracle deck to help people use the terminology for astrology for their own divination and as an easy way to learn the terminology. I wrote a book to make it easy for people to walk into their own charts to empower people. And I have, many other divination systems around. I'm working on a deck of the Wise Tree deck based on the Ogam. But those are all tools in my toolbox. Basically, I try to just be there for the person and listen and help them with what I've got to find their own path.
Oh, yeah, that's really interesting. There's so much in there that I want to ask you about. But I think first I'll ask you, how did you get started on this path?
The family joke is my mother is a psychiatric nurse, or was, and my father was an abstract mathematician. And you put them in a blender, you get an astrologer. If it's, but I collected as a child, I collected mythologies. I was a slightly strange child. I had a lot of kind of past life memories coming in, and I had some health issues that gave me near-death experiences where I had croup and I would stop breathing, and I'm watching them carry me into the bathroom, and then I wake up upside down in the bathroom with them trying to get me to breathe. And so I knew that we were more than our bodies at 5. And then was like, what else? What else is going on with this? My mother was very psychic, but didn't know it. She was just kind of annoying as a mother because she always knew things. And I had that it that intuition. How do we work with it? It doesn't come on command. It comes when it wants, when it needs to. At school, I was born in 1955, so by the end of the or late 60s, early 70s, I'm at the high acquisition rate, and all of these alternative tools were out there. I happened to be at a high school, where the niece of a famous astrologer, I was 14, was our telephone operator back when such things existed. And I helped her out so I could pump her for information. And I watched her one day say to an elderly man and a young man, young teacher, "Could you be a little careful this weekend?" And when they were gone, she said, "I'm a little worried. There's some tough aspects this weekend, and it's hitting both of their charts." She had the charts of all the teachers on campus. And the elderly man died of a heart attack. He was a drama teacher, so he died on stage. And the young man fell down and broke his leg. So I said, "Come on, tell me more, tell me more." And so I pumped her full of information, bought an ephemeris, which is, how do you look at the planets of a person back then before we had computers to carry with us. And I carried that everywhere I went. And I ran away from home. I did all kinds of adventures as a teenager in the early 70s. And I had my ephemeris, and I would just look up everybody and watch them and let them teach me how the planets worked.
Wow.
And it gave me so much information. Then I went into human resources and was, I had the charts of everybody I worked with at a spa, at a store, at a this and that. And so in my late teens, early 20s, I was still gathering a lot of information. I'd also had some interesting experiences around tarot. And where I had been helping a friend who, uh, my dear closest friend, but who had had a hot fire in her. I think nowadays we might say she's bipolar, but uh, she had troubles, and I was doing tarot. Like, yes, it looks good. Looks like there's a problem in the future, but I don't know where. It would show up. The problem in the future would show up in every card reading, and then she called me. She'd kind of gone off to California and called me and said, I'm really feeling something. Can you give me a reading? So I did a reading for her and mailed it, and it came back unopened. I'd had an out of body experience when like weird, like it was thrown out of my body. And then I came back. I was, what was that? And I found out a week later that she'd been murdered at that moment.
Wow.
And my reading that I sent after that event
Hmm.
said, oh, great future now. It's in the past. Whatever it was in the past. You just have to get over an anger for a violent young man.
Hmm.
And like, so she did, I felt her spirit healing she did not, she was hitchhiking in California.
Ah.
And it, and I had to put my cards down for a couple of years,
Hmm.
but I had respect for it and began to kind of learn it. I would say it's my second language. Astrology is my first, palmistry also. I also ran into a teacher who was a player from India, and he was also a palmist. And he had told me about this friend. Keep an eye on her. I'm worried about her. I said, she's got a very faint lifeline. And just, and I've seen people's hands start taking prints at that time. Back nowadays, I just tell them to take a picture on their phone of their hands. But then
Ah.
we took woodblock prints. And unfortunately, the whole stack of them got washed away in a flood once. But I watched people's lines change over time,
Ah.
depending upon the decisions they made. And
Hmm.
that's what's empowering about this. I don't think predicting the future is important, but it's a look down each road. How do I live these symbols out? I'm very what I call choice-based astrologer. So each planet, each sign, each symbol has 180 degrees of expression. How do we avoid you can't choose which planet's being set off in your chart, but you can choose how you express it.
Hmm.
Sometimes there are bigger karmic cycles than that. It won't help you if you're caught in a flood in Texas. But that was the astrology of that time was amazing, but the power of it allows us to work with it to feel empowered. Like I don't have to get mad. I could admit that I really hate my life and need to make big changes. So instead of getting accident prone, I'm going to be adventurous and go explore what would be better. And
Mm.
that's a good use of a Mars-Uranus aspect or something.
Yes.
Same thing with palmistry. It can be a way of like, how do I round myself out? I've seen people with lines that didn't look like they were going anywhere totally change their lives when they developed purpose or direction or engagement, and then suddenly their lines clarified. I've seen people start drinking heavily, doing a lot of drugs and fuzzing out, and that may be what they needed to do as a healing time in their life. But all of a sudden, a series of kind of like fine lines and networks will just sort of clutter up their hand and make it less dynamic. And that may be healing for them. So I'm not going to sit, I've just noticed the pattern.
Hmm.
So it's never predestined. It's pre-inclined. Now, how do you want to work with it?
Hmm.
That's my approach.
Yes. So your approach is here is here are your possibilities,
Right.
and how do you play these out in the best way?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned ephemeris. For
hmm
those who are not familiar with that term, what is it and how do you work with it?
Uh, you can do it now easier by computer, but it's helpful if you want to be an astrologer to know how all the mechanics of a chart fit together. And ephemeris used to be a book with every day of the year, and I had one for 150 years, very thin paper, that would give you the degree. Each sign has 30 degrees, and then it has minutes and seconds. But it's like a circle, it's 360 degrees. And so each sign is 1/12 of that. which is 30 degrees. You can think of that like the address on a block. So if you know the address, you know if it's in the 300 block, it's going to be at but 301, it's going to be at the beginning of the block. If it's 398, it's going to be at the end of the block. It kind of helps you know where it is in the sign and how they relate to other signs. So ephemeris is where all the planets were and what degree they were for hundreds of years. So you can meet someone and go, let's see your birthday. Oh, okay, your Mercury was retrograde in Leo. Your Venus is in, Gemini. Your Mars is, and you can go across the way. I can't and see where all the planets were and roughly how they relate to each other without too much math. To
Mm.
make an accurate chart used to take hours.
Yeah.
Now it's a little flip on my computer and I have it,
Yeah.
which is wonderful.
Yeah. So, how did you come to make your Astro Oracle?
Deck. I was working I work with a bunch of divination systems and cards, but I kept coming back to, people would show me all their cool systems of symbology. And I said, I already work with one of the richest symbolic systems I know. How could I put that in a form that can use those same symbols and put them in a divination deck because they will let you know what you're working with. The whole idea of any oracle deck is that you give it a set of symbols and then your intuition and serendipity come together and synchronicity and give you a way of looking at the problem in a way that you hadn't thought of, that can give you a symbolic nexus to see what the medicine is. And it, the, um, so I said, why not turn them into it? And while I'm at it, when I ask people why, you seem really interested in astrology, why haven't you taken it further? We're so much more than our sun signs. It's this beautiful, rich system. I said, because those terms, they get so confusing.
Yeah.
I said, well, if I can take it and uh, put it so that they can learn one term at a time while they're pulling an astrological card, then I can teach them the story of astrology without having to to work at it, to cause just say osmosis. For instance, I just pulled this card, which is Virgo, and it's a sheaf of wheat, somebody holding a sheaf of wheat. And I worked with the astrologer to put with the artist, a tattoo artist from Australia, to put in Vesta, which is I think one of the co-rulers, Mercury, and the wheat. And for Virgo, for instance, it's a woman holding a sheaf of wheat. And back in the day, a Virgo, a virgin, didn't necessarily mean a chaste woman. It meant a woman who owned herself.
Yeah.
And that, it became later that the only way that she could own herself was to not have sex with everybody. But I think that the original thing is a self-possessed, centered woman, and I love that image.
Hmm.
And she's holding a sheaf of wheat. And wheat, back when wheat was good, had to be separated from the chaff in order to be used. Virgo also rules the guts, which rules the intestinal tract, whose job it is to separate, this is a nutrient, that's crap. Its job is not to hold on to the crap, but to let the crap go and inhale the nutrient. And that's some of the power of the symbol for Virgo is a woman holding a sheaf of wheat, the wheat, and that has to be the ability to sort, to absorb what needs absorbing, release what needs to be released. And that's the healing power of that Virgo quality. So that's the card I pulled for us. But I have all the asteroids, the houses, the aspects, and the north node, south node, ascendant and descendant. That's the descendant, how they relate together. There's layers and layers if you
Hmm.
put the cards together, but you can just use it by pulling one card. So that was my hope. And so far it's been translated into 11 languages. I can't believe it.
Wow,
I
that's
don't know how it's
amazing.
selling there, but it seems to be getting out, which is
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah, because yeah, astrology can be difficult to learn. So if you have a method of learning it that you can kind of understand it, it's great. Yeah.
That's kind of, I hope, the language. And then I wrote the book. This is the book I've been trying to write for my clients so that that they can walk into their own chart. It's not, it works if you want to become an astrologer eventually. It's a good foundation, but it's mainly meant for people who just want to be users of astrology. Like
Hmm.
I use a sewing machine, but I'm not a seamstress,
Yeah.
but it's how to can use astrology as a tool for what you need. Uh, and it with a it also acts as an extra book for the cards and the cards for that. They work together.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and so people, you do readings for people online?
I live on Zoom. That's one of the great gifts of the pandemic. And there were so few gifts. I was so sick with it. I was in New York when they closed it down. And it, but when we um, come back, that everybody learned how to use Zoom. And so my clients, I can do readings over the phone, but it's really works to be able to show their chart to them and talk about it with their chart there. When they record it, then they can download their chart, and they have a permanent copy. And it's an easy way to get the recording to them. And I live in nowadays, I've lived in New York, Minnesota, New Mexico. We lived on a reservation. My mate teaches at tribal colleges. So we lived, on the Canadian border in North Dakota for 3 years. And now we live in Montana on the Salish and Kootenai reservation area. And Ren has just recently retired from the tribal college here. But, I live 2 miles out of a small town. I would not have clients if it wasn't for Zoom. I couldn't live out here, but I get to just be and honor that druidic side of myself that communes with the woods and needs it, uh, and then have wonderful clients online. So I'm very
Yeah.
grateful for Zoom.
Yes. Great ad for Zoom here.
Great ad for Zoom.
So, speaking of your druidic side and your connection to trees, tell me about the tree that you have outside your home.
I was mentioning that I have beforehand that that I have as a druid my sacred text. I mean, all of the sacred texts around the world. I have a wall, but my main spiritual scripture is the woods, is the natural world, and listening to how it works, what wisdom it has to impart, how how all our relations manage and interact. And I have a teacher outside my office window of an ancient rowan tree. And rowan trees, and that's my middle name, but rowan trees don't really live very long. They're like aspens or poplars. They have, 40 to 80 years lifespan usually. Then the new one grows up. And this is a big multi, branched old tree. And usually they would plant rowan trees by your door to protect you from bad things. It's a very protective tree. But its skin is so full of bugs that you see where all the bug-eating birds have drilled kind of symmetrical holes, like it's tattooed, and it's beautifully designed all around. So in that process, it's beautifully, uh, it feeds the birds. It's also producing so many berries, the rowan tree, the bright orange berries of a mountain ash. It's another name for it. That the branches fall over in the fall. They're heavy, and they feed the birds all winter. And I see this compared to some of the younger trees, which are strong, and that it knows that it's getting ready to go. It's in its final decade, maybe maybe 2 decades, but it's getting there. It's kind of winding in, but it has the richness of deep roots, and it has the wisdom of the strength that it is built, and all that juiciness, and all the its berries are bright red because it is, it knows how to do this. And that flowering of production, of that richness from all its life, is going into feeding all the animals. And so it is a bird feeder by itself. And I was thinking I published my first book at 60. I turned 70 this fall. I have been, I've now got several books out, and I am doing more work than I've ever done and loving it. That it is the richness from my roots, from that whole life. And I think of the process, I've always hated the idea of maid mother crone because I think they're missing a step. I think it's maid mother queen crone.
Mm.
And that when we leave the phase where we're nurturing everybody, we step into the time when we have a little less energy, so we only need to spend it on what we're here to do. And we are the queen of what we know. And this is the age when the world tends to kind of stop listening to women.
Yeah.
But this is when you're like the rowan tree. You're bearing fruit. You know your stuff. You have a lifetime worth of experience. This is your time to share. That's the queen phase. And then when you're like, enough with the sharing, I need to rest. I'm going to be the wise person. You can come ask me questions. You start stepping into cronehood. But this is really rich, juicy period of time. You see, most women politicians really shine in this phase. Women artists really cook here. My tree shining. So I'm kind of working on taking the teaching from my rowan tree.
Yeah, what a great teacher that tree is. And I love that phrase, the queen phase. It's really great. So, before we end, is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Well, and continuing from that, I'm developing a deck of cards for this fall about that'll come out a year from now. And it's taking, the British system of, or a Celtic system of using Ogham, that trees were both a symbol and that you could, an alphabet. But I want people to look at whatever tree they find. So we have eucalyptus in my deck and acacia, and that because I want you to then go walk out and look at what's on your land, or what tree spoke to you in the woods, in the park today.
Mhm.
When I lived in New York City, there were still trees that had something to say every now and then. More likely they were, weeds trying to break up through the sidewalks. But the most amazing trees live in corners, even in a city,
Mhm.
and that they are a symbol set by themselves, that they are healing to be around. So uh, that's the deck. And I would just say, ask anybody to take that time and take your question. My favorite form of divination is a divination walk. When I worry about something, and it's easy to use my own symbols and talk myself into things. So sometimes to step out of that, I just take a divination walk and say, please help me understand. And I notice, did I scratch myself? Did a bee sting me? Was it beautiful? Did I have to crawl across a scree slope? What the story of my walk gives me information that I need for gives me the divination that I need. And I read it like I was reading a tarot deck, to go out and have a conversation with your natural world. Let it teach you its wisdom.
Well, that's a great ending. Thank you so much, Heather. And thank you to everyone who's watching and listening to Crone Chronicles.